programme, and I'd like to particularly thank Senator David Norris for raising this private member's motion on such an important topic. I've a long-time admirer of the work of Senator Norris, and I know those families who are impacted are very lucky to have such a champion in you, Senator Norris, because when you take an interest in what is a human rights issue, I know you take it very seriously and will see it through, and I look forward to working with you in that regard. I can understand the very genuine interest in this matter, and indeed I share it. We've all heard the real-life experience from parents whose children have been affected by a rare disease. And most recently, as the Senator said, I've had the opportunity to meet with Les and Linda Martin, who I welcome here to the office today, the parents of two young boys, Cathal and Kieran, battling a rare disease, and I welcome their sister, Holly, also. What seems like complex and difficult to the rest of us is indeed so personal to Les, to Linda and to their family, and they've shown remarkable courage and determination in telling their personal story. And people don't tell their personal story because they want to. They don't do it for the sake of it. They do it because they want to improve the system. They want to make sure that no other family has to endure the very difficult circumstances that they endure. That's why people tell their personal stories, to change minds, to change hearts, to change policies, to change laws. And in doing so, the Martin family has brought a renewed focus and a priority to this area, and I really do thank them for that. Les and Linda opened the doors of their family home to me, and I was delighted to be given an opportunity to meet with them and to meet with their children, to meet with Biscuit, the family dog, as well. It's a very special family, and it's one I hold in very high regard, and I thank them for being here this evening. Like so many other people facing adversity, I know they strive to make the situation better for those around them and into the future, and I want to work with them, and I want to work with this House. As the Senator has already referenced, there has been cross-party initiatives and efforts from right across the spectrum to progress this issue, and I commit this evening to working with all of you to achieve our united goal of making our screening programme the best and the strongest it can be, and also working with other countries in terms of what is best international practice in relation to this as well. As you know, Ireland has a well-established newborn screening programme. We were indeed actually one of the very first countries in the world to introduce a national newborn screening programme back in 1966. We were world leaders in this area, one of the first countries in the world. And newborn screening, more commonly perhaps known as the heel prick test, is offered to all newborn babies in Ireland through their parents or their legal guardians when they're between 3 and 5 days old. It's a completely safe procedure that checks the baby's blood for 8 rare conditions that are treatable if detected early in life. It is important to say we have expanded our programme in recent years. Up until December 2018, we were screening for 6 conditions, and then it has expanded since December 2018 to 8 conditions. Of course, most babies born in our country, thankfully, will not have any of these 8 rare conditions that the heel prick test checks for, and it's important to say that for expectant parents perhaps watching this debate. However, for the very small number of babies who do, detecting a condition early can have huge benefits. It means that treatment established as effective can start early, which can then improve their health and prevent severe disability or even death. And each year, over 100 babies are identified and treated. And actually, I think it's even more than that. I also think it helps a family plan and prepare and indeed make decisions in relation to future family choices as well. That knowledge, that certainty. As Senator Norris has mentioned in his private member's motion, Italy has recently adopted legislation for mandated national screening. Extended newborn screening has become a mandatory national public service there, and now every newborn in Italy receives a free and compulsory test which can give an early diagnosis shortly after birth of about 40 rare metabolic hereditary diseases. The Italian approach is certainly generating a lot of discussion and a lot of debate at an EU level and across all EU member states, and unlike some of Senator Norris's comments, they also screen for some conditions that are not treatable. And that's, I suppose, a matter of debate and ethical debate as well. They screen for conditions that are treatable, but they also screen for conditions that are not treatable. Last month, at the request of Les Martin, I had the opportunity to speak to my Italian counterpart, the Health Minister Grillo, in Italy, and I also had the opportunity to meet with her Italian delegation at the recent meeting of EU health ministers, the EPSCO meeting in Luxembourg, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I had a chance to discuss their approach and also to ask if we can learn from them and learn from their experiences. They very kindly offered to host my department officials on a visit to Rome to discuss further their policies and to see their own facilities. And I'm very pleased to say that my officials, at my request, have accepted that invitation and are now working out a suitable date to visit Rome as well. It is important, though, to state that we're not standing still in Ireland, and I'd hate anybody to think that, because in an Irish context, we've already very much started the ball rolling in the right direction. As the Senator said, a national screening committee will be established this year, kind of the mind boggles that we've never had one before, right? But we will now have a national screening committee here in our own country. The idea is that will strengthen the governance, the transparency and the oversight of any proposed new national screening programmes or changes to existing programmes. Let's remember where this came from. This was a key recommendation in the Scally Review of 2018, and I'm very glad to report that work is progressing well. In fact, I'm pleased to tell the Seanad that today I appointed the chair of that new National Screening Committee. I've appointed Professor Niall O'Higgins as chair, and a very excellent and eminent physician, highly regarded. He has a significant track record, and I look forward to working with him in this regard. I met Professor O'Higgins last week, and respecting fully the independence of this new National Screening Committee, and its independence is important, I did ask that as part of their initial body of work that they would prioritise, and that their first item of work would be a review of our national newborn blood spot screening programme, and specifically to look at how Ireland should best proceed with an expansion in line with best international practice. And I'm pleased that he, as the chair, has agreed to this course of action. And I'll be looking at Les, who rightly is constantly very eager for me to keep on making progress and not wait, and I fully understand that. In the meantime, I've asked my own department to do some preparatory work and analysis that we can hand over to that screening committee as well. I am pleased that the committee will be set up this year, and it will also work very closely with its UK colleagues. They have a national screening committee in the UK, and we can learn in that regard. Ireland has always evaluated the case for commencing a national screening programme against the international accepted criteria, and the evidence bar for commencing a screening programme should and must remain high. I suppose just to comment on this, and not to be too personal, I mean, different people will have different views in relation to this. As a relatively new parent myself, I would have liked the option of my baby being tested for lots of conditions, even perhaps ones that aren't treatable, so that you know and have the knowledge. Other parents may prefer not to know, and that's also okay. So, in my time in this ministry, I've adopted a view of being pro-choice, and I'm very much pro a parent's choice in this regard as well. So the mandatory element of Italy would concern me somewhat. I'd like a parent to have the right to know, the right to have the test. But I'd also respect from an ethical point of view, particularly for conditions that are not treatable, that some parents may wish not to know. And I've had a chat with Les and others in that regard as well. I think it is about choice and about providing that option as well. It is correct to say that the number of conditions screened for by member states in Europe does vary, and very, very significantly. My department has done an initial body of work for me in this regard. So, for example, Malta only screens for 2 conditions. As we've said, Italy screens for over 40. We screen for 8. The UK screens for 9. This is not a scientific tally, but roughly speaking, it seems that the average is that countries screen for a number in the teens. So I think it's fair and objective to say that Ireland is screening below the European average, Italy very, very much above it, and Malta really, really low, the lowest with only 2 as well. So this variance does not necessarily reflect major differences in the genetic backgrounds of population or estimated prevalences, but does highlight, I suppose, different member state approaches to the estimation of risk and benefits in their populations, and also responding to cultural demands and ethical difficulties arising from a lack of evidence to screen for many of these rare conditions. It is important to say that newborn screening is just a small but important part of what is a very exciting new area for genomic medicine. I know there's a lot of debate, and I read a lot of debate about this, but this does have the potential, if done correctly, to transform medicine, to get into real personalised medicine by using new technologies, new therapies, and also meeting ever-increasing and understandable expectations as well. There are internationally accepted criteria in total that need to be met before commencing a population screening programme, and we must continue with robust, methodologically sound and detailed analysis of the evidence in each case. And this is a point I would make, and I've made it indeed to Les, and I've made it to some of the rare disease advocacy groups, and I'd make it to Senator Norris and the Seanad tonight. I have no difficulty with a law in this regard, none whatsoever. What I would have a difficulty with, and I don't believe it's the Senator's intention, is crossing over that line into clinical expertise. And I think what we have to try and do together, there's a role for clinical leadership here and there's a role for political leadership. We have to try together to get to where we want to, where we listen to the voice of our clinicians, where we bring our clinicians with us, where we allow our clinicians to learn from other countries and best international experience, and where we as policymakers set the policy. So we have a policy role, they have a clinical and medical role, and a medical ethical role as well. And what I would hope is, with the combination of leadership in this House that I'm seeing tonight, the leadership that I'll offer also, and the leadership that I know from a clinical perspective the National Screening Committee will offer, that we can align in that regard, because it is so important, and we have seen in this country in recent months, in the last couple of years, the importance of confidence in our screening programme, clinical robustness behind our screening programme, and proper governance and transparency structures. So that's not in any way to dampen or pour cold water. It's merely to just, I suppose, be constructive in terms of how we take these next steps. But I say that believing we can take them, and believing that we can and should expand our newborn screening programme. It doesn't feel right to me that Ireland is screening for less conditions than the European average. That doesn't sit well with me. And that is why I have asked the new National Screening Committee, as its first body of work, to look at how do we expand the screening programme and how do we learn from best international practice. Finally, I'm very grateful to Senator Norris. I genuinely am for the opportunity that this debate provides, and I'm certainly not opposing the private member's motion to answer Senator Boyne's question. I thank him for his comments as well. As I've said, I am currently implementing the recommendations from the Scally report to establish the National Screening Committee. I've said that its inaugural meeting will take place this year. I have asked that the important issue of newborn screening and its expansion in line with best international practice is its first body of work as well. But I also want to say that that's not all I want to do in relation to rare diseases, and it's not all I know Les Martin and Linda want to do in relation to rare diseases, and it's a lot more we need to do in relation to rare diseases. And the Senator rightly mentioned the National Rare Diseases Plan that we have. The phrase, I understand why we use the phrase rare disease, but it's actually, I don't think it captures it. A lot of this, they're not that rare. There's an awful lot of people impacted in Ireland with rare diseases, and we need to do an awful lot more. So one of the things that I have agreed at an excellent meeting I had with Les and advocacy groups in my department last week was that in advance of Rare Disease Day, which takes place on February 29th, 2020, which is indeed a rare date, it is an opportunity, it is a very important opportunity to recognise our rare and wonderful citizens. And what I'd like to see happen is that we would put in place a programme of things that we would do. Yes, the screening is one part of it, and I've outlined what I intend to do in that regard. But I also think we should look at a public awareness campaign about rare diseases. In fairness to the HSE, it's one of the things they do very well, running public health campaigns and information campaigns. I've seen them do it on the HPV vaccine. I've seen them do it on lots and lots of other things. A rare disease campaign, making our other citizens aware, and also looking at signposting families to support. And one of the things I've been asked to do is to try and bring families together. There's a great feeling of loneliness, might be the wrong word, but isolation, not knowing where to turn, families wanting to learn from each other. So I have committed that my department and the HSE will work with the advocacy groups, whether we call it a workshop, whether we call it a summit, whether we call it a conference, that we would have a gathering of families impacted by rare diseases so they can talk to each other and talk to us and tell us what we need to do. And that also there'd be an element there where we could bring clinicians together so they could talk with each other and learn from each other. So I want to assure Shannon Éireann this evening, and most importantly, I want to assure families and people affected by rare diseases that I intend to have a very busy programme of work between now and the 29th of February 2020 as we prepare for Rare Disease Day that will help in a meaningful way raise public awareness, support families, put in place the signposting and the information that people need when they get a diagnosis, and that information is really lacking, quite frankly, at the moment, and also have the work of our newborn screening, of our National Screening Committee underway. So we have an exciting agenda, and I hope and indeed I know that people in this House will help with that work and will assist us in improving awareness of rare diseases and helping families along with what can be extraordinarily difficult journeys.
Thanks, Minister. Senator Burke, you have 8 minutes.
Sorry, thank you very much, Minister, and thank you. Can I also thank Senator Norris and Senator Boyne for raising this issue? I think it's